Hello friends, I am back with another real-time process video answering some of your burning questions. Last time I did a marker and colored pencil illustration, so this round I will be painting this portrait using acrylic inks. If you're curious about my acrylic ink painting process, I talk about some of my techniques in my mythical ARTBOOKS review. Also, as always, the art supplies I'm using in today's video will be listed in the description down below. With this portrait painting, I honestly just wanted to experiment and not put too much pressure on myself. The only direction I really gave was that I wanted to try painting the skin with a blue highlight slash cool undertone, since I typically always paint very warm skin tones. And in the end, I actually was pleasantly surprised with the result. Most of the process I was like, I have no idea where this is going and it might be hideous. So I'm glad that it ended up turning out. Also, what you're seeing in this video is in real time, but I did chop up some of the bits where I'm mixing paints off screen or I'm just idly staring at the image. That way it's a bit more concise. Because I think in total this piece probably took closer to 2 hours, but I didn't want you guys to sit and watch that long of a video. So yeah, just wanted to put that in little disclaimer. So over in my YouTube community tab and on Instagram, I asked you guys to give me some questions to answer for today's video. I got a number of questions that I have already answered in my previous Q&A video, so if you don't see your question answered here, it's possible that I've already answered it. As well, any questions relating to how to find your art style or how to grow your social media or Instagram following as an artist, I have excluded from this video as well because I have 2 entire YouTube videos dedicated to those topics. So if you are wondering about those, I would recommend checking those out. And I will have all of these videos linked for you in the description as well. So now with that out of the way, let's answer some of your questions. How long do you think it took you to develop your art style? As I believe I had discussed in my art style video, I have been consistently creating artwork for about 16 years. In my opinion, your art style is a journey rather than a destination, so I don't really see why we need to be so fixated on it at this point. I think it's better to just create artwork that speaks to you and focus less about curating a quote-unquote art style. Have you always loved drawing? Yes. Throughout my entire life, drawing is probably the only true hobby that has always stuck with me. I was never interested in sports, dance, really any physical activities, and I also never learned how to play any instruments. I never went to summer camp or anything like that, so basically my interests throughout my life were pretty narrow, and I think more or less drawing and watching TV were kind of the 2 main things that I did to occupy my time. How did you keep yourself motivated to get better when you first started art? So when I was a teenager, that was when I was really drawing a lot. My main motivator was wanting to express my love of various TV shows and movie characters. In those earlier years, I was obsessed with anime. But I had no friends to discuss or fangirl with, and so instead I turned to making copious amounts of fan art and eventually started sharing it on the internet and made like-minded friends online. So I guess my mindset was that I wanted to get better at drawing mainly for the sake of just being able to continue expressing my obsession with these characters and to try and do them justice. How not to be discouraged when working on fundamentals? I know that it can be pretty disappointing to not be good at something right away, but the reality is everyone has been in that same position. most people don't pop out of the womb being able to master really any kind of skill. Something that I think makes a big difference is try not to compare yourself or your work to other artists. Instead, compare your current art to your old artwork. It's hard to see the progress day after day, but if you compare it to something from years ago, you'll likely be able to see a more significant progress, and I think that will help keep you motivated to keep working at it. How do you feel when the painting is not working out, and what do you do? I, like many of you, often face many challenges and frustrations when working on illustrations. If you've seen in my YouTube video how I fixed a failing watercolor painting, I think is the title, I think it helps give some insight into some of the ways I problem solve my way through an illustration. But long story short, the painting was initially watercolors, but it was causing a lot of problems, so I ended up using colored pencil and gouache on top of it. For the first half of that illustration, I really didn't think it was going to turn out, but thankfully I muscled through it, and eventually the final result ended up being pretty decent. I find that a lot of the process in making artwork, there's often going to be ugly stages before it looks any good. And even if the final result is not what you hoped it was going to be, you still gained a lot of experience and knowledge during the process anyways. Any time spent making art, no matter the result, I think is still worth your time, in my opinion. Because you're never going to get better if you don't put in those hours and that time and energy. How do you tackle the fear and doubt of posting your art online? As I mentioned earlier, my initial reason for posting my artwork online was to feed my need to connect with other anime nerds. So it was a very long time ago, but I don't think I really factored in any of the potential cons. I was probably more focused on the pros, which I think might be the best way of looking at it. Put your energy and thoughts into all the positive elements of what posting your artwork online could bring rather than the negatives. How do you stay productive? If I am working on a project for a company or client, there are typically deadlines that I have to adhere to. So in those cases, I know I have to work and plan accordingly to meet those deadlines. Which of course is easier said than done, but in my mind, I know that if I fail to deliver, not only does that inconvenience the company or the client, but it also jeopardizes my working relationship with not only them, but also for future opportunities. When it comes to my personal work, I also set soft deadlines and criteria that I want to meet. With YouTube, currently I have been aiming to have a new video out every Friday, and for my Instagram, I set out to have a couple new posts on my feed every week. So basically, I guess how I stay productive is that I set goals and deadlines and then plan and manage my time accordingly to meet those goals. Unfortunately, that does not always happen, but mainly for my personal stuff, of course, but that also means that I have to be really careful about how I spend my time. Particularly during quarantine, of course, I don't really have a social life, but even when we weren't in quarantine, my social life was already pretty low-key, and I don't play any video games. I don't really do a lot of extracurricular activities, and so most of my time really is spent for my art career / business. But the one thing that I have to be careful about is TV shows and movies. I try my best not to binge watch entire series or long sessions of sitting on the couch watching TV. So yeah, you just have to be really good at time management. Do you draw in the morning / evenings or after / when you feel motivated? I actually don't have a rigid schedule. I have a bullet journal that allows me to keep track of important deadlines and dates, and I often write down the things that I want to accomplish within the month. But when it comes to a day-to-day routine, I just sort of evaluate what tasks are most important, and if I'm having a hard time motivating myself to do those important tasks, I will try to mix up the more fun tasks in between as kind of like a reward. But generally, I do prefer to get the bulk of my productivity done during the day and take it easy during the evenings. But of course, that doesn't always happen. And especially when we weren't in quarantine and I was still working at my retail day job, I had to kind of work on my art career / business around that schedule. And so there was definitely some times where I would be packing orders or editing a video like well into the evening. But now that we are in a pandemic and I am at home all the time, I'm able to have a better schedule, I think, about that kind of stuff. Did you go to art school? Did you find the transition into the working world easy, and did you feel prepared? So immediately after high school, I did a 1-year program called Art Fundamentals, where we explored a little bit of everything to help us get an idea of what creative field we wanted to go into, as well as help build our portfolios for that respective field. In that year, I did some life drawing, acrylic painting, sculpture, technical design, and a few other things. I was really torn between pursuing illustration or graphic design, and thinking it was going to be the more practical choice, I ended up doing a 3-year graphic design program. So did I feel that transitioning into the working world was easy, and did I feel prepared? Absolutely not. I spent many years completely unsure of what I wanted to do after I finished school, especially having gone through and paid for 3 years of graphic design and coming to the realization that I didn't want to be a graphic designer was mildly terrifying and very confusing. A lot of the successes that I have seen during these past couple of years is really just me figuring it out on my own. The amazing benefit creatives have nowadays is that the internet really gives us so much freedom and a wider reach than we ever had before. There's so many more opportunities and resources right at our fingertips. But honestly, I think the mindset that I had and I feel like still have, is just fake it till you make it. Like, I imagine that online and to you guys, it appears like I know what I'm doing, but I absolutely don't. And I'm still very confused and still definitely don't feel prepared at all. Like taxes, who knows how to do that. But I'm honestly just taking it one step at a time, and I'm happy to take you guys along the journey. Have you actively tried to change art styles when you didn't like it, or did you let yourself draw freely? Sort of. So I think my major transition was when I was in my late high school years or early college years. I realized that I didn't want to be pigeonholed to being a quote-unquote anime artist. So I think it was around that time when I really started to experiment a lot more to figure out a way of stylizing that felt more uniquely mine rather than just copying anime or manga artists. And over the years, I have definitely had my ups and downs about how confident I am in my work. Whenever I feel dissatisfied with my work, I try to figure out what exactly it is that bothers me about it. And once I'm able to deduce those flaws, I proceed to try and experiment to push my work in the direction that I want it to go in. Of course, I'm never going to see results overnight, but rather it is a constant, ongoing uphill climb. When you are learning to draw, is it better to focus on one single topic, like anatomy, perspective, or drawing landscapes, or doing different topics? Everyone is going to be different. There is no perfect answer. I think ultimately you should make the work that interests you and what makes you happy, but also to work on the things that you think will benefit you in order to create said illustrations. So for me, I really enjoy drawing people, but I also want to put my people in environments and settings more often. Thus, I need to practice landscapes and backgrounds in order to do so. So if you are finding that you have an interest in multiple things, then definitely, draw like multiple things. But if you only have an interest in drawing portraits, then just draw portraits. I think it's good to try and strike a balance, but ultimately you want to still enjoy the experience. Because if you are not having fun making artwork, then what is the freaking point? How do you get started with sketching? Do you look for references or just start? Both. If it's something really casual in my sketchbook, sometimes I'll just work without a reference and dive right in. But I will say most of the time I do like to browse around Pinterest, Instagram, Google, wherever for references or at least for inspiration. Especially if I'm doing a more complicated illustrations or I'm drawing things that I'm not super familiar with. In those cases, definitely several reference photos is pretty key. How do you feel about people tracing your artwork? Please do not trace my artwork. I really do not recommend anyone to trace anybody's artwork. And if you really want to improve as an artist, tracing is not going to do that. You need to learn how to draw things on your own. Otherwise, you'll just be relying on somebody else's hard work. Do you prefer rendering or finishing pieces more with traditional or digital media? And do you consider one to be more fun/accessible than the other? I often find it so curious when I get questions about digital art because pretty much 95% of my work is traditional. So I think it goes without saying that I much prefer traditional media, whether it be gouache, watercolor, colored pencil, etc. I just find it much more interesting to work with real paints and pencils. And for me, I find that the final result has so much more character and life in it. The few times that I do venture into digital illustration, I find it much less engaging and I get bored with it pretty quickly. I also find that the finished product for me feels kind of stale and just lacks those unique imperfections and quirks that traditional media has. And when I say this, I absolutely mean this in relation to my own artwork and process. I admire tons of digital artists who are able to achieve and create amazing work that is vibrant and full of life. I just personally have never been able to achieve that with digital media, and I just find that it's more satisfying to be able to mix my own colors and, feel the textures of the paper and, that kind of, process of it is just more fun for me. And while I do generally prefer traditional media for fully rendered illustrations, I do actually prefer sketching and planning digitally. There is just so much more flexibility and ease in being able to manipulate a sketch over and over and over and play around with the colors that I obviously just can't do with an actual pencil and sketchbook. Where do you buy your art supplies? I typically get the majority of my art supplies from local art supply stores. I live in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, so I go to Desairs, Curry's, and Above Ground. If I can't get something from them, occasionally I'll purchase from Amazon. And the reason why I typically don't leave links to the art supplies I purchase is because I know that most of my audience is international. So leaving links to Canadian art supply stores seems a bit redundant. But I will always list what I'm using in the description of my videos, and I highly recommend supporting your local art supply stores if you can. And if not, Amazon and Google will help you find it. Favorite art piece you've ever created and why? I'm going to cheat and pick more than one art piece, but the first favorite of mine is this watercolor and gouache illustration I did for Inktober last year titled The Study. It's one of those few illustrations that I had a very specific vision for and was actually able to execute it exactly how I had hoped it would look. And I'm sure if you guys are artists as well, you probably understand that sentiment. My second favorite is this Princess Bubblegum and Marceline watercolor illustration I did earlier last year, I believe. I just find the color palette so appealing, and I enjoy how whimsical the pose and the general piece feels. Do you have an art piece that you're not proud of and why? I feel like there's always room for improvement with any of my pieces. I don't think I've ever created something and thought this is perfect and there's never going to be anything else I would change about it. But the one that disappoints me the most is an illustration I did for Inktober last year titled The Priestess. I remember being so excited about this piece, and I just feel like it didn't end up turning out the way that I had hoped, but I felt obligated to post it because I was participating in Inktober and I didn't have the time or energy to redo it. And people seem to really like it, so it's interesting how sometimes something that you don't like or not proud of will read completely different to people who, didn't know what your exact vision was for it or didn't know what the process was like for you. So that's why I have chosen to, keep it up and have included it in my Inktober zine and everything. Do you think artists subconsciously make their art look like themselves? To some degree, yes, I think it can happen fairly often. I think particularly with portraits, because your own face is typically what you're most familiar with and see on a daily basis. So I think it just seems natural that subconsciously your own features may appear in some of your own drawings. However, this isn't always the case, and the next question perfectly leads into the opposite idea. Has your art been affected by beauty standards, and is that okay? Have you ever questioned why some of your art doesn't look like you? I have noticed when I freely draw, some of the women I draw look nothing like me, and I'm usually uncomfortable drawing myself. How do I get over that? I can absolutely relate to this sentiment, and I think it's a totally normal thing to happen. For me, and I'm sure is the case for many other artists who primarily draw/paint people, we are often depicting what we deem to be an idealized beauty. What each person finds appealing is going to vary, of course, but yes, sometimes can be influenced by society's beauty standards. I am someone who often struggles with insecurities, but particularly during my high school years, I had very low self-esteem, especially when it came to my physical appearance. So during that time, I would avoid drawing women or characters that carried any physical traits that I had that I didn't deem to be attractive. But over time, I've been able to be a bit kinder to myself and in turn include some more diversity in my drawings. Of course, I recognize that there is still plenty of room for improvement and further diversity in my work, but I think I'm now at a place where I can accept that both my art and myself are a work in progress. So my piece of advice would be try not to be too harsh on yourself. And I think that maybe some of the kind of uncomfortable feelings you're having about your work might be stemming from maybe a more personal element in your life. So honestly, just take it step by step and just try and, be kind to yourself. How has your audience influenced you as a person? Have changes been good or bad? In terms of my values and who I am as a person, I don't think that has changed from having an online presence. However, having an audience has definitely helped keep me on track when it comes to staying driven and goal-oriented. Knowing that there are people out there who look forward to seeing my artwork/videos and even some gain inspiration and motivation from it, in some ways I feel like that holds me accountable. If I don't deliver on this content that I've promised, I feel like not only am I letting myself down, but I'm also disappointing my audience. And I know that for the most part, you guys wouldn't, be hunting me down if I didn't post a new YouTube video on Friday or something like that, but it's something that I think just helps keep me motivated because I get so much, joy from all of your lovely comments and the interactions I get with you guys. So I think that element has been a very positive experience in my art career, I guess, being online. How do you feel about your art in general? As I mentioned earlier, I definitely think that I have a long way to go in pretty much all aspects of my art. And while I'm not 100% satisfied with my illustrations, I've come to accept that I don't think I ever will be. But thankfully, I am currently in a place where I can feel proud of some of the work that I make from time to time. And basically, I just have a healthy relationship with my artwork. And I think that's all we can really ask for. How do you get out of your comfort zone and get past your fears while drawing? Keep a sketchbook. Specifically, keep a cheap sketchbook with the intention of never showing it to anyone. I think a lot of the fear that people have about creating artwork is that they don't want others to judge it or feel pressured to produce something really nice due to the cost or quality of a particular art supply. But by keeping a cheap sketchbook that no one can ridicule, you are eliminating those factors. So yeah, what is there to fear if you make an ugly drawing in a cheap sketchbook that no one is going to see? Apart from the ones you shared on social media, is there any art materials/art styles you're doing offline? On and off, I've been playing around with using polymer clay in hopes of making some cute handmade pins/brooches. But I have come to realize that I don't think I'm very good at it, and I find I get bored of it really, really fast. But I will keep trying in hopes that something good will come out of it eventually. Favorite art movement from history? Are you interested in art history? In high school, I was very fortunate to have art teachers who were very passionate about art history and in turn made me really love it and interested in it. I admit I am very rusty and me being a classic Libra, I can't commit to one art movement as a favorite, but rather I will divulge into a few of my favorites. When it comes to decor and architecture, I am a total sucker for the Rococo, or also known as like the late Baroque era, where everything was hella lavish, ornamental, and featured tons of pastels. It's really extra and very feminine, so of course it is right up my alley. In terms of artwork, I remember being very interested in the Impressionist, Post-Impressionist, and the Art Nouveau movements. I was particularly fond of Claude Monet. Wow. I nearly cried when I saw his gigantic water lily paintings when I was in New York. I think it was in the MoMA, could have been the Met, I don't remember. But it took up several walls. It was like its own room, and it was amazing. I also really love Edgar Degas, especially his ballerinas. I was very lucky to have gone to see some of them in person when I was in one of the museums in Los Angeles. And lastly, I took great interest in Henri de Toulouse-Lautrec and Alphonse Mucha, who both have a more kind of graphic, illustrative approach to their work that I took great inspiration from, especially in my years during college. Oh, and as an honorable mention, Katsushika Hokusai. I know it's a cliche, but the wave is iconic for a reason, and his work is amazing. And I think similar to Toulouse-Lautrec and Mucha, I really like and gravitate towards his work because it has that kind of graphic element to it. What are some of your art goals for your career and YouTube channel? I think I may have answered this in my previous Q&A, but as some of you may know, I technically am not a full-time artist. Of course, because of the current pandemic, all non-essential businesses are closed. But previous to that, I did work a part-time retail job. So my main goal is to become a full-time illustrator and content creator. I work my part-time job for financial stability because as of right now, I'm not able to comfortably afford to live as an independent artist just yet. I actually hope to start a Patreon in the near future to not only help me financially, but also just to be able to continue to provide lots of content for you guys, because once I go back to my day job, I probably won't be able to provide nearly as many YouTube videos or artwork in general like I have in the past couple months. When I was at my day job, I was able to keep up with 2 YouTube videos a month, and now that I've been at home all the time, I've been able to make 4 YouTube videos a month. So having, all that time really makes a big difference. Do you manage your social media and YouTube by yourself, or do you get help? I am a one-woman show, guys. I literally do everything myself. I create the artwork, I manage my Instagram, I film, edit, create my YouTube content, I print, pack, ship all of my online orders, answer emails, all the things. It is exhausting, but I would much rather be doing this than working in an office or going to my day job. Is there a specific point where you felt like you were becoming a successful artist? As I just mentioned, I'm actually not a full-time artist, so I wouldn't really consider myself a successful artist, because in my mind, I think being able to sustain yourself on your art career alone, that is the mark of a truly successful artist. I am still reliant on a day job in order to, survive. So when I get to the point where I don't have to have a day job, that I think will be when I can say I am a successful independent artist. Favorite part of your drawing process? Definitely drawing the face. There's just so much life and character in portraits, and I just find it so exciting no matter how many times I've drawn eyes, nose, lips. It's just, I don't know what it is. I just love it. It's so exciting for me. Favorite art books for inspiration? I don't have a huge collection, but I do really love the art books that I do have. I have 3 Studio Ghibli art books. I have The Art of Spirited Away, Howl's Moving Castle, and Princess Mononoke, which are endless sources of inspiration when it comes to especially backgrounds and character designs. I also have an American pinup art book that I adore, which has influenced a lot of my work. And lastly, that I'm going to mention, I have an Art of Pixar book, which mainly features color and storyboards, which I absolutely love looking at as well. It's really interesting where some of the films have a really graphic storyboarding style, and some are much more, I guess, detailed. And even though I don't intend to be a storyboard artist, I still find that it's really interesting to look at. I have also actually purchased a few art books from independent artists as well that I really, really enjoy. The first ones that come to mind is Osmos by Sibylline Maynette. I also have a Haikala zine called Once, and I also have a really, really beautiful art book by Eastwood Wong. All 3 of these books I definitely find myself looking at as well when I'm needing a kick of inspiration too. What are your top 3 mythical creatures you like to draw/paint? Ooh, this is a really fun question. I love drawing mythical creatures, which I guess hasn't been featured too much on my YouTube channel as of lately, but if you've seen my Instagram, you would probably know this. I literally did an entire Inktober doing mythical creatures. So first, I think definitely has to be mermaids. It's probably the mythical creature I've illustrated the most. Secondly would be a succubus or demon ladies in general. I just find painting unusual skin colors to be really, really fun. Lastly, I don't illustrate them as often, but I also really love centaurs, particularly because I am eternally mesmerized by that scene in Fantasia with all the centaurs prancing around in the garden. But horse bodies are really hard to draw, so I feel like when I get a little better or more comfortable with that, I'll probably be drawing more centaurs. How are you holding up during this quarantine? I'm doing pretty good. Of course, I miss being able to see my friends, and I'm disappointed I can't attend the comic and anime conventions I had planned to table at. I also, just miss going to the beach and going to concert, things like that. But I understand that in the grand scheme of things, I am incredibly fortunate to be able to live comfortably in quarantine, because I know that is not the case for many people and for many different reasons. I'm really grateful to have the online community here on YouTube and on Instagram as well, because not only is your support helping me financially, but it has also been a beacon of positivity as well, being able to connect and interact with you guys, especially during my live streams. If you didn't know, I've been doing a lot of live streams on Instagram and on YouTube, and they have been really, really fun. Favorite movies and shows right now? Okay, friends, I am freaking obsessed with the new Netflix show, Never Have I Ever, created by Mindy Kaling. It just came out and I may have accidentally watched the entire season in one evening. I've been a fan of Mindy Kaling for a while, so I knew I was going to like it, but I didn't realize how much I was going to love it. It is such a hilarious and heartwarming show about an Indian American teenager dealing with high school, but also with the loss of her father. The diverse cast and representation is amazing, but also I find that the writing is really, really smart, and I both laughed and cried throughout the entire season. I don't know if I've experienced such a wide range of emotions in one evening. Now I will impatiently wait for a second season that will probably not happen for another couple years because given everything going on right now. But it is amazing, and if you have Netflix, I highly recommend checking it out. Oh, and I also finally watched The Witcher on Netflix as well, which has been out for a long time. I'm really late, I know. I've never read the books or played the game, but I generally quite enjoy fantasy stories, so I found that it was really, really entertaining and I really enjoyed the series. Plus, now I fully understand all the appeal surrounding Geralt. He is very rugged and handsome, and, you know, the white hair and the yellow eye combo, it's good. I'm digging it. Very Inuyasha. Favorite series of all time? I'm going to assume TV shows. So if you've joined in on any of my live streams, particularly on Instagram, you have probably heard me gush about Avatar: The Last Airbender a lot. I wouldn't be surprised if people are sick of hearing me talk about it, but the reason why I talk about it so much is because I freaking love that series to death, and it might have to be my pick for favorite TV series of all time. I pretty much never get tired of discussing it, and I have watched it several times over. I am actually currently rewatching it right now. I'm at the very end of season 1. Am I excited for the new live action version coming to Netflix? No, I am not. Similar to how I was discussing about the whole live action remake thing, it's, same sentiment. I just find, you can't improve upon something that was nearly perfect. Your favorite video games? I unfortunately don't play video games. Growing up, I never owned a game console, and so going into adulthood, I never really felt the need to get one. But I guess, I of course played things like Mario Kart and Mario Party at friends' places and whatnot, but because I never owned them myself, I was always really, really bad at it. Plus, they are very expensive, so I'm kind of okay with not having video games as part of one of my hobbies. But I will admit, I am pretty jealous of everyone playing Animal Crossing right now, mostly just because it looks really cute and I feel like I'm really missing out on this seemingly global phenomenon. But I just have to accept that I will not be able to indulge in it because it is not cheap to get that Nintendo Switch. Do you like musicals? I do. If I lived in New York City and had ample amount of money, I would absolutely be seeing Broadway musicals all the dang time. But I don't live in New York City. But when I do get the chance to see them, if I'm visiting or when they, certain shows come to Toronto, I really, really enjoy going to see them if I get the chance. And I also love movie musicals as well. In high school and early college years, I was obsessed with Moulin Rouge. I had the biggest crush on Ian McGregor in that movie. I thought he was so cute, and I loved the music. I thought it was really unique how they mashed up iconic songs together. And in terms of live shows, I have gone to see the Lion King musical twice, and I cried both times. And I finally got to see Wicked when it came to Toronto a few years ago. And I still regularly listen to that soundtrack because it is amazing. I've been really wanting to do some Elphaba and Glenda fan art for a while. So hopefully I'll get around to doing that because I love it. What do you like on your pizza? I really enjoy getting like chicken, spinach, onions, and sun-dried tomatoes, which is basically the things I also enjoy in my pasta as well. But basically, I don't like olives, anchovies, pineapple. Those are like the things that I avoid with my pizza. What's your favorite ice cream flavor? I love ice cream. It is probably one of my favorite desserts. My top pick might have to be matcha. I'm obsessed with matcha. But if that's not an option, because obviously matcha is a bit more of a specialty thing, I always will go for cookies and cream because it's a staple and I pretty much never regret it. It's never can go wrong with cookies and cream, I feel like. And in Toronto, I am very fortunate to have access to many gourmet frozen dessert shops. And one of my favorites is this place called Keiku. They specialize in Asian flavored gelato, and I never get tired of going there. There is so many amazing, delicious flavors to try. Like they have Vietnamese coffee flavored gelato. They got peanut sesame, black sesame, Hong Kong milk tea, oolong tea. You can even get durian gelato if that's your jam. Durian's not my thing, but it's an acquired taste that some people really, really love. And if a place has some kind of Earl Grey or London Fog ice cream, that is also a big favorite of mine. Basically, I really love frozen treats, and I could probably talk about it a lot. Favorite animated film aside from Studio Ghibli? All right, so as you may have guessed, I have a really, really big love for animated films and TV shows. If I were to pick a favorite that wasn't Studio Ghibli, it might have to be one of the Disney Renaissance films from the 90s. I can't pick one because that's impossible and I'm a Libra, but Hercules, Mulan, Aladdin, to name a few. Those are kind of the first that come to mind that I really, really love. Animation-wise though, Pocahontas is stunning. I understand that the story is, got its problems, but it's beautifully animated. And if we're not going with Disney, because that seems like the, kind of cliche answer, I also think The Iron Giant is an incredibly underrated film, and it is amazing. What is something that is overhyped? So, continuing on the topic of Disney, I think these dang live action remakes are seriously way too overhyped. I'm honestly kind of sick of them. Remakes in general are tiresome, but as someone who loves, respects, and appreciates animated storytelling, I just find that these live action remakes to be such a money grab, and I feel like they're just a weak, regurgitated echo of the brilliance and magic from the original animated versions. So, I said it. I don't care. Okay? They're not my thing. I watch them sometimes, but I'd much rather enjoy the animated version. What's your guilty pleasure? Continuing on my Disney-related answers, my absolute guilty pleasure is the original Disney Channel TV shows and movies, like High School Musical, Hannah Montana, That's So Raven, etc., etc. Not too long ago, my friend and I rewatched High School Musical and Camp Rock, and oh my god, they are so bad and so cheesy, but they bring me so much joy and entertainment. I don't know what it is. It's probably, I think a lot of it has to do with nostalgia, but also, I don't know. It's very fun. Very, very fun. Favorite Charli XCX album? This might be the obvious answer, but it's got to be her newest album, Charli. It's, all killer, no filler. But I also think her EP, Pop 2, is a very, very close second. Lots of great tracks on that record. And if I'm being honest, I prefer track 10 on Pop 2 over Blame It On Your Love on Charli. As much as I love Lizzo, track 10 it hits different. Who's your favorite queen from RuPaul's Drag Race on this season and all time? I have been rooting for Jada Essence Hall from the very beginning, so I'm pumped that she's doing really, really well right now in the season. I also really love Gigi Goode. Her fashion sense is incredible. I'm, of course, like RuPaul, living for Crystal Method's mullet. It's amazing. Queens of all time, I can't pick one, so I'm just gonna list off a bunch that comes to mind. But I really love Manila Luzon. I love Raja, Shea Coulee, Naomi Smalls, Kimchi, Katya. I could go on forever, but yeah, there's so many queens, fierce queens to choose from. But I do find that generally I do lean towards the queens who have really, really strong runway looks. Do you like Sailor Moon? If so, who is your favorite Sailor Senshi? Like is an understatement. I love Sailor Moon. That series has undoubtedly informed a lot of my interests and my artwork. Again, I have a hard time picking just one, but I do really love Sailor Jupiter for having this kind of balance of masculine and feminine traits, and Sailor Mars for how feisty she is. But, I also can't deny that I totally had a crush on Sailor Uranus, and she's fierce as heck. So, those are my picks. But I will say, when I was younger, when I was initially watching Sailor Moon, Sailor Mercury was actually my favorite, because I think at that time when I was little, I was also kind of quiet and shy. So I think I related to her in that sense. But as I got older, my favorites have changed, but I still love her. I love them all. Let's be real. Team Jess, Logan, or Dean from Gilmore Girls? I am 1000% Team Jess. Now, I know this causes heated debate, but hear me out. I totally agree that he was a bad boyfriend when they were dating, but, he was a teenager who felt abandoned by his parents, and he did not know how to communicate or express himself, and so he was not good with those things. But I think throughout the series, Jess is the one who always challenged Rory intellectually, and they had a lot of common interests, not to mention great chemistry, and is ultimately the one who helps motivate her to go back to Yale when she kind of, goes off the rails, and later write a book. Plus, he has such a great character development and growth as he gets older and matures out of his quote-unquote rebellious teenage behavior. And I think he's the cutest. There, I said it, whatever. But no, seriously, he's my pick. But ultimately, let's be real, Team Paris all the way. She is amazing. If you could have lunch with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be and where? To be honest, it might have to be Naoko Takeuchi, who is the creator of Sailor Moon. I probably butchered her name, I'm sorry. But can you imagine being the creator of something so iconic and culturally impactful? It's amazing. I would love to know how that universe and those characters came to be, and just kind of like how she feels about just, that kind of having that kind of pop culture impact. Plus, I think it's so fascinating that she actually studied chemistry and became a licensed pharmacist before pursuing a career as a manga artist. That's also so amazing and really interesting to me. Oh, and of course, I have been wanting to visit Japan for a really long time, so that would just be the cherry on top for sure. Oh, and by the way, because I'm sure some of you are curious, the illustration that I did on the left side of the sketchbook page was also done with acrylic inks as well. I did not film the process for that one though, because sometimes it's just nice for me to take a little break from filming and have a no pressure, relaxing painting session. Also, on another note, filling up this page marks the completion of this sketchbook. Finally. I know that my previous sketchbook tour was not very popular in terms of view counts here on YouTube, probably because it's so old. And while I admit that a good chunk of this sketchbook is also pretty old, it does have more watercolor and gouache stuff in it, so I think that it will probably be a little more interesting, and so I will probably do a video flip through soon on it anyway. So I think that is going to be all the questions that I'm going to answer for this video. I apologize I couldn't get to every single question that I got, but thank you so much for sending them in. And as a friendly reminder, there is a good chance I answered your question in my other Q&A video if you are happening to look to fill up another hour. Anyway, I hope that this was able to provide some entertainment and keep you company, whether you were also painting or cleaning, knitting, whatever it was that you're doing while you're watching this video. I hope that you guys are all staying healthy and safe, and I will see you in the next video.